Qualified, professional, and compassionate doctors talking real solutions to real health problems.
Can one with hearing loss ever get to hear again? Tonight on the Doctalk show, it is me, Dr. Joseph Ogav Jagen, and we are going to talk about hearing loss. Tell me, how much hearing loss do we have in the country? Who is at risk of having hearing loss? How do you know that one could be having hearing loss? Where can you go for help? And what can be done about it? Joining me is a team of experts from the New York University. Professor Roland, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to be back in the country again. This is my 15th year coming to Uganda and trying to help children and adults with hearing loss.
Welcome, Professor Sean Mark Bellamy. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Happy to be here.
And we are glad for the lives that you've impacted, one of whom is that of Manzi Josiah, who is here with his father, Gordon Gumiswiza. Gordon, I wish you'd talk to us about your experience with your son, Manzi. We know you're a father of 4. You've had 2 children normal, and then a 3rd one comes, and you suspect something. Tell me, how did you get to suspect that Josiah could be having hearing loss?
Manzi was actually born with his hearing, but he lost it after he suffered meningitis at 1 year.
So meningitis is an infection of the brain.
After the meningitis, we discovered that he was, well, about 2 to 3 months in, we discovered that he was no longer responding to call-outs to his name. And then that's where we picked it up from, to start going for diagnosis, to find out what could have happened, whether there was medication, and what to do from there.
How did you go through the tests of confirming that your child could actually be having a hearing loss?
We were advised by the ENTs to do an audiology, and the audiology actually confirmed our fears that he had actually lost his hearing, well, most of it. And so after those tests, then we were advised to do a cochlear implant, which would help to restore his hearing.
And have you actually done a cochlear implant?
Yes, we have done the cochlear implant. It was done here in Uganda by Professor Thomas and Professor Sean.
I can see the smile it brings on your face.
Yes, at TMR Hospital in Malie.
Oh.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
1 year ago. Yeah.
How has this transformed the life of Manzi and you as a parent?
Well, for Manzi, it has been the biggest transformation. The fact that now he has gotten his hearing back. He's going through therapy which will help him with speech and listening. And we hope that probably after another year or 2, he'll be able to join mainstream school.
We've got to hear from Gordon that Manzi actually suffered a meningitis, which is an infection of the layers that surround the brain. What are the commonest causes of hearing loss in a country like ours, and how much of a problem are they?
Well, there are acquired and hearing loss, and there's congenital hearing loss. So a child can actually be born with hearing loss, and that cause is usually a genetic cause. There is a gene that gets together from the mother and the father, and that gene makes part of the inner ear ineffective at providing information to the brain about sound. Acquired hearing losses, there are many causes, and meningitis is one of the causes. And meningitis is an infection, usually bacterial, that gets around the brain and the brain tissues, and it can also get into the inner ear and damage the structures of the inner ear that are responsible for hearing. And in Manzi's case, that's what happened. He got meningitis. He was very ill. He was treated for the meningitis with very powerful antibiotics. And fortunately, he recovered nicely. But the result of the meningitis left him with total hearing loss.
And Professor Mark Manami, is it possible that we can actually prevent this at such an early age?
Well, you can prevent hearing loss with early diagnosis and treatment of meningitis, and that's obviously what we hope happens with every child. Also, there are vaccines that can help prevent meningitis in the first place, and that actually is very important and can help children like Manzi not get meningitis at all, and therefore not suffer the side effects of meningitis.
What are the challenges in recognizing these problems in a child that is 1 year, 2 years?
Well, if you can't hear, you can't develop speech. So we look for developmental delays as one of the cues for hearing loss. We would ideally like to screen every child that's born for hearing loss, because the earlier we diagnose the hearing loss, the earlier we can implement a treatment, whether that treatment is hearing aids or, in the case of Manzi, cochlear implants. So the challenge is in making the diagnosis in a timely fashion and then implementing the correct strategy for treatment.
So 1 year on, Gordon, after Manzi's transforming implant, what have you seen that has changed? Can you interact with him better? Are you enjoying your fatherhood with him?
Previously, if you ever, say, called him out or gave him instructions, they would have to be, they were not lingo instructions. But now if you call out Manzi, he will respond.
Manzi,
And
how are you? I'm fine. You're fine. Great to have you here.
yeah, and he's learning, for example, he's learning the colors, he's learning animals. We're still working with the comprehension, which is coming in, and bit by bit, everything will fall in place, and I think he will be able to carry on as any other normal child.
Manzi, how are you?
I'm fine.
You're really fine, I can see. Great smile. You like colors? Tell me, what color is this?
What?
White it is. And right behind Daddy?
Green.
Green it is. And the lights?
Blue.
Great. Thank you. So, Gordon, I know you're happy as a father, and Mom must be happy for Manzi to get to speak again, hear again. But how has it been with the siblings, the older brothers and the young ones? How have they welcomed the fact that Manzi can actually speak and hear?
Thank you. Well, Manzi's speech has brought tremendous joy in the house. The fact that now he can communicate with his brothers, he can play with his brothers, he can communicate with his mom. Previously, it was a battle of this is what he means, or this is what he means by that gesture. But now he's able to put it out. Now he's able to say his eyes are hurting, or he's got a headache, or he fell. So it has brought so much joy in the house, and we're really, really happy that we were able to do the implant for him, not only for the period now, but also for him in the future, to open up more possibilities for him.
As you go for the break, please follow us on Twitter at Doctalk Show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like us on Facebook. We'll be glad to respond to your questions. Thank you.
You are watching the Doctalk Show. You are watching the Doctalk Show.
So welcome back from the break. And joining us is yet another specialist, Dr. Chris Nolile. Dr. Chris Nolile is a senior lecturer in Makerere University in the ENT department, and is heading the collaboration between Makerere University and New York University and is working with TMR Hospital to advance care related to hearing loss in the country. Welcome, Dr. Ndorelile.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
And we're glad to host you. Tell us, Chris, what is hearing loss? Is it any different from deafness as we have known it?
True, hearing loss is failure to perceive sound, whatever sound it is. It goes from mild to severe. We don't normally want to use the word deafness because it's attached with this some stigmata. But when you're severely impaired, like you don't have any constructive sound that you perceive, then we call you deaf, as in quote. That's what the community will call you. But as scientists who deal with hearing, we tend to call it hearing loss, and we know it can range from mild, moderate, severe, and even profound. So that's what we call hearing loss, just failure to perceive sound, which is very essential to our day-to-day life because we live in sound.
Is this a problem that is common in Uganda? Do we need to know about hearing loss?
It's bigger than a problem. You see, when you have a problem and nobody knows about it, it becomes slightly bigger. So with hearing loss, you have a silent epidemic. It's below, like at the tip of the iceberg. Nobody sees, you don't care about it. But it's under the sea and it's brewing and brewing and brewing. So it is what you would call a silent epidemic. And if not tackled quickly and we try to create lots of awareness, then at one point in time we are going to find that many of us cannot comprehend what we are speaking, and then we shall become less productive. Statistically, almost 1 in 1,000 children born in this country will have some kind of hearing loss. So if you take about 40 million in this country and you divide by 1,000, you can get the figure of how many people are actually suffering this kind of hearing loss. True, we are a low-income country, and some problems tend to get bigger with the economics of where you stay. So much as we say 1 in 1,000, that is the statement, but because of our economic status and all the social things that run with this country, you will tend to find that the hearing problem is slightly higher.
So how do we tell that one could be having problems with hearing loss? Professor McManley.
Well, we identify it in the very young children with screening. Hopefully every child, as we said in the first segment, is screened at birth for the presence of hearing loss. We talk about milestones. Children should be developing speech. We know at what age this should occur, and if that doesn't happen, immediately hearing should be tested. And once you become a young adult or an adolescent or an adult, if you begin to notice your hearing declining, then we would recommend getting a hearing test. There are different types of hearing loss, and our treatment needs to be aimed at the particular type of hearing loss that a patient may develop, whether it's hearing aids, whether it's ear surgery, or whether it's a cochlear implant.
Is there any benefit, Professor Roland, in determining the hearing loss early enough? Does it help?
Oh, yes. No matter what type of hearing loss one has, the management of that hearing loss is most effective the earlier that you detect it and the earlier that you begin to treat the hearing loss. So a child who's going to get a cochlear implant, the earlier we can give them the cochlear implant, once we've made the diagnosis of hearing loss, the better they will do, and the less hard work they'll have to do over those early years to get to a level of other children. The goal is to have every child mainstream in school with appropriately managed hearing loss, and that doesn't happen many times. It's a bigger disability in this country and in every country than one thinks, and the World Health Organization recognizes hearing loss as a major disability in both resource poor and resource rich countries.
How are we going to make sure that we get our children tested early enough, or even the older patients, that they come early enough? Any strategies you think that we can adopt as a country?
Yes. There are lots of proposals, and these proposals, once in place, should help us get this problem sorted. Currently, what is happening, there are few testing centers in the country. It's not widespread, but you can have a test at Mulago, Makerere University Medical, the hospital. You can have tests in KCC. Is a voluntary organization that is helping testing children, and it's in Chisenyi, so they are doing some work. Some private people, one or two, are helping test children. And I think at Mbarara University, they also have some testing facilities. So if those few kind of facilities within the country, that's why we say that there is a silent problem, and we need to tackle it as a huge mass, you know, like the country. It would be my great idea for this country to put testing gadgets or carry out hearing tests. For example, I think one of the successes of this country is immunization. I don't know the figures, but I know it's people go and immunize. And one of the proposals that we have is try to put a hearing test, maybe screening hearing test at maybe a regional referral or a district hospital for starters as a pilot. That will increase the number of people we can catch, as in the pediatric population. For adults, the normal way of identifying that you have a hearing loss to go for a test, you have less productivity. You know, you start not hear, you have so many pardons. If you are with your boss, you're messing up stuff. So it creates a lot of social problems with you. And then you could see an ENT doctor. Testing in adults and children is slightly or totally different. So for adults, it's easy, and the tests are readily available. You know, they are easily found, and they are not as hard as for those of children.
Which brings me to the next question. We fear the ear so much. It seems to hurt, even with a little poke. Are your tests harmful? Should we fear, especially for the children or those older patients?
No, they are not harmful. They are just simple tests. We put, like, you're hearing headphones on your head, and then we send simple sounds which we expect you to respond to. And then if you don't, then you have a problem, and you can have a problem at mild level, moderate, or severe level. That's for adults. For children, it's slightly different. We need an objective test, because the child will not tell you that, yeah, I've had this test. No. So we test the pathway from the brain, from the time the ear sends the signal to the brain, so that interface. So we put some small electrodes. They are also not painful. And technology has gone so far that we could do this test with the mother carrying the baby, could slightly sedate the baby or put them to sleep, depending on the characteristics of the baby. But they are not painful, and they are very safe.
It's been thought that treating hearing impairment is actually very expensive. Are all the options expensive? Do we have all of them available here in Uganda? Can a small country like ours, Professor McManamy, be able to manage the burden of people that are having hearing problems?
Well, it is expensive. I think what has to happen is the country has to make it a priority to diagnose children with hearing loss, and then help the families get the appropriate treatment, whether it's a hearing aid, whether it's a cochlear implant. No matter what it is, as Dr. Rowland said, the earlier we make the diagnosis, the earlier we begin treatment, the better that child or patient will do. So I think what has to happen is, has to be recognized, as Dr. Chris said, that it is a real healthcare issue, and then we have to get the government to act on that priority.
Thank you. So I'm inviting all of you to prevent hearing loss. We recently had immunization, very good response, and among the diseases that we are preventing was rubella. And we know rubella is one of the causes of deafness, especially in children. So I'm inviting you, join the national campaign to immunize against rubella and measles and all these problems that can actually cause hearing loss. Doing that, we shall prevent hearing loss and save our children and give them a bright future. As you go for the break, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and like us on Facebook. Your questions are welcome. Our team of experts will be ready to respond.
You are watching the Doctalk Show. You are watching the Doctalk Show.
Welcome back from that short break. The Doctalk Show is continuing. And for about 15 years now, the country has embarked on a collaboration with the New York University to tackle hearing loss. And Malie has led a campaign. And what happens when Professor Roland Thomas and Professor Sean McManamy come here to spend a week in the country? What happens during that week at Malie, the rest of the country? Tell us, please.
Of course, lots of things happen. We are a training institution, they're a training institution. And this started a long time ago. Wow. I think I was still a first-year resident. So many things have evolved. And this happens twice a year. It used to happen initially we used to have about 10 days in the beginning of the year and towards the end of the year. But then we cut it to a week of training. So typically on a Monday we go for lectures which we run from morning to around the afternoon hours, and then we end up in examining patients. It's good for people to share the way we examine patients. We don't examine patients the same way, you know. It's good to know how Professor Roland does. It's good to know how. So our residents and our young students interact and see how people talk to each other and see how people examine each other. So that is a typical day.
So the team comes to impart knowledge.
Knowledge.
Pass on knowledge to our
Yes.
doctors, the future doctors, and those in training, and the other specialists, to get the skill of combating hearing loss. How has the experience been, Professor Roland?
Well, it's been fantastic. The overarching concept is just building capacity, and the best way to build capacity is to teach and train and assist the young doctors to gain the knowledge that we have. And we do this, as Dr. Chris mentioned, through lectures, through one-on-one interactions with interesting patients and patient problems, discussing how we'll manage the patient. We do surgeries together. It's not really about me coming in and doing surgeries. It's about me coming in and Dr. Manzi coming in and assisting their team doing the surgeries. Many of the surgeries the team does, and we're just there to provide support and assistance and make sure everything goes as well as it can possibly go. We also have a cadaver lab. A lot of ear surgery is learned operating on with similar instruments on cadavers. And so we practice the procedures that are done. We learn the anatomy of the ear, we learn how the ear works, how it functions, what diseases affect the ear, and what we can do to prevent those diseases or treat those diseases. So overall, it's been a wonderful experience. You know, initially it started as a curiosity for me, and it evolved into almost a passion and interest. And it's also very much about friendships. We've established wonderful friends and relationships, and it's about not letting your friends down and supporting them. And each time we come, we have a goal. You know, recently our goal has been raising awareness, and you're helping with that. Thank you. And then I would bring in another friend like Dr. McMenemy, who's a partner and a friend for many years. We've known each other for more than 25 years. And one day I said, how would you like to come to Uganda with me? And he said, sure. And I think
down he came.
And he's hooked. This is his 4th visit already.
Thank you, Professor McMahon. How has it been impacting on the lives of the patients in whom you've participated, getting back their hearing, and the residents that you've trained to acquire the skill to be able to help others?
Well, as Dr. Rowland said, our goal is to help
And we are very grateful. Thank you. Chris, you're training local doctors to take care of Ugandans. How is the fellowship program going on?
Actually, the fellowship has been going on because we have been exchanging students, okay, and specialists who go to New York and have weeks or months there, see what goes on, see how their labs look like, operate, observe in the surgeries, and carry out do lab work at New York. And then they come back. That can happen almost yearly. Somebody has been going to do that. What we want now is to have a formal kind of training that we put on the market for other Ugandan doctors, maybe someone else, because Makerere is a big institution. We don't have to have only Ugandans having this training. Some people could be interested and they're from elsewhere. So we want to formalize it and make sure this works out.
There are not so many centers that provide care for those that have hearing loss. And I want to ask Chris, what are the numbers like at Mulago? A typical day, how many patients have to come and see you because they have hearing problems? Are the lower health centers, the health center 2, 3, the district hospitals, are they equipped? Are they helped enough?
Let's put it at the big perspective of the country. If you moved around, and I know, Dr. Ogavu, you've been moving around, and you are very much aware that hearing per se and hearing tests are not being done in the country. So thank you for letting us go on TV and talk about it. Maybe this is going to raise awareness. You know, in the first segment I said, this is the tip of the iceberg. Not all hospitals can do tests. And not all regional referral hospitals can handle this. But since we have started talking about it, and people are listening, I know the policymakers are listening, and they know that a few things need to be put in place. So hopefully in the next few months or years, we shall have a broad, well-laid program for hearing. I am very aware that the ministry is deeply involved in hearing and has issued statements, but we have not yet, or they have not yet put it in practice. But I am aware that that has been done. On a daily basis, 3 or 4, actually when you sit in an ENT clinic, about 6 or 7 patients, out of 10, 3 of them will come with a hearing problem. So 30% of every 10 patients you're seeing have a hearing problem. It may be mild, may be severe, may be profound. It may be easily done in the clinic, or it may need rehabilitation, or need surgical intervention. So it is a broad spectrum stuff. Does that?
Thank you, Chris.
Sorry.
As you
What's
heard,
going on?
30% of the patients that go to see an ENT
In a
doctor,
daily clinic, like
yes,
day
have
clinic.
a problem with their hearing. So we need the training, and we are very grateful to the team that is going to empower us to train our own people and be able to reach out to everyone. As you go for the break, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page. We are getting responses and we are liking the interaction.
You are watching the Doctalk Show. You are watching the Doctalk Show.
So welcome back from this break. The Doctalk Show is continuing. I'm your host, Dr. Joseph Ogavu Jagenda, nephrologist working at Zambia Hospital, and I'm happy to host my team here of ENT specialists. Welcome again. So for so long, having hearing loss was a dead end in this country until about 15 years ago when we began doing some cochlear transplants. And that is synonymous with the name of Professor Thomas Roland. Professor, how did it all begin?
Well, it began when I came to visit my wife, who has been working in Uganda even longer, but her specialty is in adolescent health care.
So it was a love affair
in some ways. I was worried what she's doing every year in Uganda. No, she invited me to come, and when I came, she said, you might be able to be of some assistance. Why don't you call the ENT department? And so I did, and I said, I just do ears, I'm an otologist. And one of Chris's professors, Dr. Turk Twenka, who I talked to, said, you're most welcome. We need your help. We don't have proper equipment, and we need training. And so I came, and I worked very hard that whole first week. I didn't see my wife the entire week because they put me to work. And we were done. I said, well, this is fantastic, and they liked it. And I said, should we continue the collaboration? And now you roll the clock forward 15 years. It's been going on since then. We came up with the idea, we would see patients that were totally deaf, and we couldn't really provide cochlear implants at that time. We were more interested in teaching people how to test, what's involved in examining a patient with a hearing problem or an ear problem. We were interested in training them how to do the ear surgeries to take care of infected ears and draining ears and ear tumors and ear diseases. And each time we'd come, we'd pick off more and more difficult cases, and we would get the team up to speed. Chris was just a junior resident at the time, and I guess I did something that got his interest in the ear, because now he's just an ear doctor. That's what he does, and that's what he's getting extremely good at. And then the opportunity came. I got a call from a woman who worked at the tax authority that said she had a nephew who became deaf after getting treatment for tuberculosis. And at the time, we had some fundraisers, and I had a couple of donations, cochlear implants. And I thought, maybe it's time to do this in this country. And we did it. We got some national attention. We were on TV that night. And the patient went from totally not hearing to hearing beautifully, and he's back gainfully employed and functioning again in society. And he's been wearing his implant now for 13 years continuously, and has done quite well. We did another gentleman a couple years later who was a priest who had lost his hearing in a similar way. And also, it wasn't so much that we're going to suddenly jump from 0 to 60 and go right from doing nothing to doing cochlear implants, but cochlear implants got attention to the problem. It's very interesting. People, it's newsworthy. People give attention. The government got attention. The Minister of Health got attention directed toward the hearing health problem. And so now we feel we've reached a level where we can now provide cochlear implants on a regular basis. And with the help of Dr. Chris and Macari and Malago and my colleagues, Dr. McMenemy and others, and our relationship with TMR Hospital and Dr. Daniel, we feel we have really a top-notch, good quality cochlear implant program. You saw one of our young children who became deaf from meningitis and now wears 2 cochlear implants on a regular basis and is speaking and hearing and getting educated. In another year or two, he'll be mainstreamed in regular school. And so I think we've come really a long way. What do you think, Chris? We made some progress?
Indeed. And the story of transforming lives. And not so long after came Professor McManamy. Tell us, how do these transplant, the implants, how do they work?
Well, I think for the viewers out there, if you're wondering, are you a candidate for a cochlear implant, the first step is to get your hearing tested. We implant patients with hearing loss that really cannot be treated anymore with a hearing aid. And what we do with a cochlear implant is to put an electrode, a tiny electrode, inside the cochlea. We do this with a surgery that takes about an hour and a half. Very safe operation. We put this tiny electrode into the cochlea and we stimulate the cochlear nerve directly, which is hooked up to the brain, and we then transmit sound from the cochlea into the brain and restore hearing. So there is an inside part, I think you'll talk more about this later, that's the implant, and there is an outside part also.
Thank you. So when you're totally unable to hear, it means that there's a problem connecting the sound that you should actually hear and the brain that receives that signal. And when you're not able to transmit it, what the implant does is to bypass the blockage so that you can actually be able to perceive. Your brain can be able to perceive, that you'll be able to speak and actually hear what others say. And Chris, implants are synonymous with very high centers and first world countries. Do we have these things in Uganda?
True. This happened 13 years ago.
13 years ago.
So
for over 13 years we've been giving people implants, restoring hearing.
That has made me laugh. This happened 13 years ago. So do not take our country as so...
so we can actually do it.
Yes,
right
so
here.
if this happened 13 years ago, you know where we were 13 years ago and where we are now. The difference is that the first implants that we did were donations. And that led to delayed program. The program delayed a bit because there's a little expense that you need to get the implant. So we moved from donations and want to start a program that is sustainable. There's no company in the world with its stocks on the market that is going to give you free things. So you need to move from that dependency to affordability and what is so special today, and I'm happy from the tax body that we received an announcement that these taxes on these hearing gadgets are going to be scrapped. So that is one step in fighting this silent burden. And I think this is going to help increase the number of implants we are having, because now each year we are implanting twice a year, which was not possible. So we are developing a big cohort. The implants are becoming less expensive because the government is involved. They cannot give you for free, but the government is trying to remove the barriers that are causing this. And true, these implants are done in Uganda. You don't have to refer people from here to whatever you want to do.
Any
And the training is going on.
where we can get access and actually get...
Malago Makere is one of them, where it started, TMR and others.
Let me ask a question, Dr. Menemy. Some people only get one implant. That might be because they can only afford one implant, and some people might get 2 implants. What's the difference between having 1 ear and 2 ears? What can a human do with 2 ears that you can't do with 1 ear?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we do have a number of patients that have a cochlear implant on one side and a hearing aid on the other side. The brain is amazing and can fuse that information. It's quite amazing. To have 2 ears is very important, as Dr. Rowland said, and I think what he's alluding to is the ability to localize sounds in space. If you only have one ear, you cannot tell where a sound is coming from. When you have two, you can. Also, the ability to understand speech and music, especially in background noise, is enhanced with two ears as compared to one.
So if I were to block one of your ears and I would be somewhere in our office and call your name, you wouldn't know which room I was in.
I'd have to go to every single room.
So life can indeed be transformed by having a cochlear implant. And the great news is, it's right here at home. You can get a cochlear implant done on you, and your life can be transformed. In fact, you can get your life back. So I thank the team that has joined us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor McManamy. Thank you, Chris Ndoyele. Thank you, Professor Roland Thomas.
My
and
pleasure.
thank you for the years that you've put in transforming the lives of those that have hearing problems. And we are glad that we are working with you. And the bright is very...
The bright is the future.
The future is very bright. Looking ahead, we shall have our doctors trained locally and working on you and reaching you back at home. Remember to prevent hearing loss, immunize your child. Mothers, get tested for diseases that could cause blindness and deafness in your children. And should you suspect anything your child is not growing well, please get to see a doctor to assess, and don't get stigmatized. You can get out of hearing loss and get to live your life again. Thanks for enjoying the Doctalk show. The conversation continues on Twitter, and please subscribe on YouTube and like our Facebook page. We shall be following you. Thank you.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources such as inspirational profiles,
having a disability is not inability,
professional guidance.
There is no special antiretroviral therapy that is given specifically for discordant couples.
And of course, politics.
Don't you see anywhere that you would give a credit in the fight against COVID?
My role as the owner of the country is not to, be preoccupied by giving credit to my servant.
We have said that if we are to talk to General Museveni, there must be certain conditions in place.
Is it true that you paid 5 million shillings to MPs that voted for Anita Monga Ntayemo?
That is laughable. Why would we pay when we have nominated them as SEC?
Every party has been represented in Uganda's parliament for 10 years. We own by one MP, you yourself and my daughter, Susan.
Every Friday 9 p.m. it's One-on-One with Michael Jordan Lukomwa on UBC TV, inspiring Uganda.
This week on UBC.
It's the freak himself, DJ